open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And welcome, everybody, to Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooprider. So happy to be with you all. Today, we'll be discussing the debates, plural, because we won't just be talking about the Republican debate. I will mention and talk about the Democrat debate, because that also happened last night. So we had the first debates in both the Republican and Democrat primaries. What did we learn? I don't know. We learned a lot and nothing at the same time. But regardless, I'll talk about it. You can join into the conversation. Shoot us over a text, 502-571-0970. Once again, 502-571-0970. Right off the top, I'm going to be asking you guys, if you watched the Republican primary debate, what'd you think about it? Who'd you think won? What were your thoughts? Go ahead and start texting those in. Once again, that number is 502-571-0970. I will be playing some clips and discussing through it. Also, if we have time, we'll talk a little bit about some legislation working its way through the legislature, including adding a new tax on alcohol. Now, instead of paying a 6% tax, if this passes, it's passed the House, it's over in the Senate. It's got a lot of establishment support, so I'm going to assume it will pass. It will add an additional 4% on. So now, before you add any local alcohol taxes, your essential sales tax, your sales tax on alcohol will essentially be 10%. Maybe you don't drink, maybe you don't care, but it is a key industry in Kentucky, so it does have a lot of effects. So we'll discuss the debate, and if we have time, we'll go into that, though I know you all will have a lot of opinions on the debate if you watched it. So make sure you get those in. Once again, that phone number, 502-571-0970. That's the Kentucky Voice text line, 502-571-0970. Asking you right off the top, did you watch the debate? If you did, what'd you think about it? Who'd you think won? Who do you think performed good, bad? Did you learn anything? Did it sway your vote at all? That's another question. I think it did have a little bit of an effect on the debate. The debate had a little bit of effect on that primary, but also, too, over on the Democrat side, it was very fascinating to hear exactly what questions they were asked. They did a Spectrum News debate. It was kind of interesting to hear some of the questions they were asked, and I did write down some notes about it. I've got one particular clip that just shows how crazy and insane some of the Democrats are that we will go over. But first, we'll dig into that Republican Senate primary debate. Now, if you like my analysis, you like hearing my voice, you like what I have to say, well, you can check out the Andrew Cooprider Show. It's right here on WGTK and WBNA. On WGTK, you can listen Sundays at 6 p.m. On WBNA, Wednesdays at 11 or 10. I think it's 11. Wednesdays at, I should know, but I don't. Wednesdays at 11. Or you can catch it on the podcast format, YouTube, other places. If you head over to theandrewshow.com, you can see all the places to listen. Also, there's a contact form if you want to reach out to me beyond the show. You're catching it on replay. You want my thoughts on something, you can go ahead and reach out to me there. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. But we will be engaging with you as we go through it today. So please text in. Let us know if you saw that Senate debate. What'd you think about it? Who'd you think won? What were your thoughts? Go ahead and shoot over those texts. Once again, that number is 502 571 0970. 502 571 0970. When we come back here in a short minute, I'll start giving you my thoughts on that debate, the goods, the bads, what I think about the format. I didn't like it, to tell you the least. I did not like that format at all. They had multiple moderators, and the lighting looked like it was done by a 5-year-old elementary school AV team. So we will go through all of that when we get back here on Kentucky's Voice. One more time, if you want to get over your thoughts, 502-571-0970. Stick with us. We'll be back in a short minute.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back here on Kentucky's Voice. Your host for the day, Andrew Cooprider, discussing that Senate debate. If you want to get in your feelings on that debate, if you watched it, or if you have feedback on what I'm talking about, you can go ahead and shoot us over a text there on our Kentucky Voice text line. That number for you is 502-571-0970. Once again, 502-571-0970. Kentucky Voice text line. So let's talk about this debate. It was the first major debate of that Republican Senate primary. I think that's incredibly important kind of as they're rolling out. Now, it is kind of early. It's, I believe, 62-ish days left till Election Day. Most people say, hey, the average voter isn't paying attention until right around about, 30 or so days out or so. So it is a little early, but it did give us a way to look at these candidates. And I want to go through the goods, the bads, everything you liked or didn't like about it, get in your feelings about it too as well. Right off the top, somebody respond with, I think Andrew Cooper won the debate in absentee. I think you mean Andrew Cooper won the debate. Well, if you think I won the debate, that's fantastic. I didn't even show up. So, if you're able to do that by not showing up, that's great. But thank you for that. So rolling through it, what did I like, what I didn't like? Here you go. So starting off, let's talk about the three candidates. First, starting off with Cameron. What did he do well in that debate? Well, first, to me, he came across as the most calm, which surprises some because obviously Andy Barr, he's been in office far longer than any of them. I know a lot of people like to hit Cameron on being a career politician. We heard that hit from Nate Morris the other day. But Daniel Cameron's only been in office 4 years total. That's the amount of time he's held public office. So, the claim of career politician, I guess what you're saying is that he's been preparing for office. He's been involved with politics. So that kind of makes him a career politician. I can hear that argument. But he has only been in office for 4 years. However, you would expect Andy Barr, having been in office for as long as he has, over a decade, that he would be a little more familiar with this debating. However, he just was not. And so Cameron came across to me as the most calm and collected. And we'll talk about the Andy Barr and the bads there here in a second with his performance and the goods. But he held his own. He also benefited greatly from the fact that the race has become clearly very personal for Barr and Morris. At one point during the debate, and we'll hit upon this again when we talk about the format, at one point during the debate, they were each asked a quote-unquote critical question of them. And then, so they were asked initially to defend it, and then the other two got to chime in on, just piling on to attack that one person, and then everybody got their turn with that. And even when given the opportunity to attack Cameron, when he was asked a question that was critical or attacking of him, and then the other two got to respond, they still chose to attack each other. Very odd, because when you look at the polling, Cameron's in the lead. Now, I know there's been some independent polling that shows Barr's up by 1 or 2 percentage points. I disagree with those polls. I don't know. I looked at the way they got their audience, I think skewed the results, because even Barr recently released an internal poll that had Cameron up about 10 points on him. So even Barr's internals are showing Cameron still in the lead. So it's odd to have these two people going at it so hardcore with each other, while at the same time, the guy that's in the lead is just standing there like looking like the adult in the room. And I think that worked out very well for him. Now, the bads for Cameron that night there, he had a few word slips that may have thrown off his message. For example, instead of saying lower taxes, at one point he said keep taxes low, implying that he's happy with the current taxation level. I don't think he is. I don't think he meant to say that. However, that is the way it came across. Another example of some word slips he had. He meant to say removing federal funding from sanctuary cities, where he disagrees with their policies, obviously, of protecting people who are violating federal law, illegal immigrants. However, what he said was blue cities. Not all Democrat cities necessarily have sanctuary city policies. I believe Louisville recently repealed large amounts of their sanctuary city policies and have started working with ICE. And so just saying flat blue cities, I think, was a little bit of slip up. I think he also missed an opportunity to differentiate himself. It's clear Andy Barr and Nate Morris are really riding that Trump train. And they're really both of them hitching their trailer to Trump, trying to out-Trump each other of who's the Trumpiest. The problem is for them is if Trump actually doesn't make an endorsement, and as it gets closer and closer to Election Day, you wonder if he's going to. And at the same time, if he does make an endorsement, but it's a double endorsement, well, that also leads to the question of, whoa, hold on, wait a second here. If it's a double endorsement, does that disperse it out where it actually doesn't move the race towards Barr or towards Morris much at all? How much can they really use that if it's a split endorsement? That leaves open an interesting lane for Cameron, where he's still saying, look, I like the president, I support the president, I like a lot of his policies, but he could differentiate himself a little bit more, where he's not just so gun-ho counting that presidential endorsement in order to make it work. Now, you don't want to offend the president, obviously, make him come out and endorse somebody, but at the same time, being able to handle it. Now, we have gotten in a few texts here, so let me take a moment from what I've been talking about to hear. He said, I felt Morris did better than Barr. Cameron cheated with the questions not asked. Cameron was cheated with the questions not asked. I can see that. We'll talk about the thing there. And overall, I think you're right. I think Morris did do better than Barr. I think if you were to rank them, it would be Cameron, Morris, Barr. Once again, surprising that Barr's at the bottom. He's been a politician so long. However, something to keep in mind, he hasn't had a competitive Republican primary in a decade. Anytime he's been on the debate stage, he's been against a Democrat. That's been his actual opponent. So trying to debate from the right is a new thing for him. I think that came across in some of his behavior on stage. Someone else said, Morris, the only non-Mitch candidate, got to break the Mitch machine. You are right on that. You're kind of right. So he's the one obviously outwardly attacking Mitch. He did intern with Mitch McConnell, but to your point, he is the one outwardly attacking Mitch. I will say this, though. There's an interesting dynamic here where clearly the Mitch McConnell machine has discarded Cameron. They don't want to deal with Cameron. He's not getting in that kind of Mitch McConnell money. And we'll talk about maybe fundraising later on. But he's not getting in that Mitch McConnell money. And that leads to the question of, is he kind of like a lover scorned, where, he's actually the most likely, if he does win, is he also going to strike out against the Mitch McConnell machine because it has wronged him so, lover scorned, right? That is an interesting dynamic that I think is worth watching. It'll be interesting to see if Cameron gets more open with attacking Mitch as it goes on. Going back to the text messages, and you can get in your feelings too, 502-571-0970. Someone said Barr looked like he needed Ritalin. You have a point, and actually I have clips pulled to make this very point that we will go into in the next segment, because I will go into Barr's performance. And I'm just going to say overall to me, and I said this online, he looked like, to me, he came across like a bad door-to-door salesman. Like a guy who knocks on your door, is very excited by the fact that you open the door for him, and now is trying to say as much as he can, as fast as he can, as loud as he can, in order to try to grab your attention before you shut that door in his face. And I have some clips there to demonstrate that thought to you. But the takeaway a lot of people had is, look, he seemed unhinged. He needed Ritalin. Was he on performance-enhancing drugs? I heard somebody make a joke about, maybe we need to be testing them for performance-enhancing drugs. Ever since, obviously, the Biden elections, where he was doped up for every single debate, you wonder if that just became a thing in politics where we're like, hey, we're just going to dope up everybody and send them up on stage to act like a crazy person. But we will discuss that. Someone else said no real policies were discussed. There was a tiny bit of policies discussed, in my opinion, just a tiny bit. They did ask about boots on the ground in Iran. I know Barr answered that question. He tried to sidestep it at first. The moderator came back and said, but do you support boots on the ground in Iran? He essentially said, I support whatever the president says we should do in Iran. So as much as policies were discussed, but the response to the policies were just, whatever Trump is doing right now, that's what I'm good with. Whatever he does into the future, that's what I'm good with. That was largely the differential on them for policy. Nobody had like that breakout moment that they could have had in that first election. So we'll have this when we get back. We'll continue to discuss this. I've got more texts coming in. I'll hit upon Barr, then hit upon some of these texts. You can get in your feelings, 502-571-0970. Once again, 502-571-0970. That's the Kentucky Voice text line. I've got several more texts to go through. We'll discuss those when we get back, and I'll break down what Barr did good and did bad here. And just stay with us for another 2 minutes. I know it's a very engaging show today. We'll see you back here in a few short minutes.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back on Kentucky's Voice, your host for the day, Andrew Cooperrider. Very excited to be with you guys. Got a lot of texts coming in as we're discussing the Republican primary debate that occurred here this week. You can text in your thoughts, 502-571-0970. I've got probably 5 or 6 more texts that have come in that I'm going to respond to here. I first want to talk, I talked in the last segment about the goods and bads of Daniel Cameron. I'm going to talk about the goods and bads of Barr that night. So goods, he did hit upon the good things in his track record. Honestly, he was, to me, as a conservative, Barr has always run in a very moderate district, and his voting record shows that. In fact, he was prominently shown on what's called the Main Street PAC, where they endorse both sides of the aisle and they try to get the most moderate people they can to just do the work, quote unquote, do the work, which to conservatives, that should alarm us sometimes, because do the work to me means get government involved in my life, and maybe you shouldn't. But regardless, he's always been in his voting record, he's voted for increased spending. He's voted for sending funds over to Ukraine. He's voted for a few things, the Defense Authorization Acts that include spying on Americans. There's a lot to hit him on there. But nobody really hit him on his record. But at the same time, he was able to illustrate the good sides of his record. And I think that did help him out because he's able to put that forward. And he did a good job of defending himself by going back to his records. Now, here's the bads. I'm going to play for you 2 videos, okay? The first one is Barr's opening statement. Now, the opening statement of debate is the opening and closing, generally speaking, are the most rehearsed. The opening will be the most rehearsed because they won't try to change anything in their minds like they would maybe in the closing statement. But they rehearse and rehearse and rehearse this opening statement. I'm going to play for you a part of Barr's opening statement to compare that with as one of the people who texted into our text line 502-571-0970 said that Barr needed Adderall because of how he started to behave later on in the debate. So let's play this first one here. Here you go. Here's just his opening statement, well rehearsed.
Start tonight with Congressman Andy Barr.
Well, good evening, Kentucky. I'm Andy Barr, an 8th-generation Kentuckian, proud grandson of 2 World War II veterans, and a blessed husband and father of 4 beautiful children, and I love Kentucky. At the outset, I want to express my sincere condolences to the families of 2 fallen Kentucky heroes, Sergeants Pennington and Pruitt, who gave the ultimate sacrifice in the service of our country in Operation Epic Fury. I'm running for the Senate because I still believe that the American dream is worth fighting for, and Kentucky deserves someone with a proven track record of delivering results for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Now, this is very important. I'm the only candidate on this stage who is actually working with President Trump right now to deliver on this America First agenda.
And so there's his opening statement, well rehearsed, relatively calm, not thrown off kilter. Okay, he did blink a lot, by the way. Real quick pause. I said I'd discuss this later on. I'm going to mention it now. That set, that lighting, trash, horrible, absolutely horrific. If I have better lighting, and I'm literally I'm doing this remotely today instead of in the studio with my normal studio. I'm a one-man operation when I do my own show. And if using my resources, I'm able to put together a better lit situation than TV stations are able to put together. That's a problem. It was horribly lit. It made it look so bad. However, to his statement. So you heard him a little more calmer, a little more collected. Here's later on in the debate how he started to behave. Here's just a snippet, randomly taken snippet. Here you go.
And one of them in the big, beautiful bill, the reconciliation bill, is we said, finally, with respect to Medicaid, no more waste, fraud, and abuse, no more paying people to not work. And we said for able-bodied, work-capable adults, whether you're talking about food stamps or Medicaid, we want something better. than government dependency. We want the dignity of work. And so instead of punishing work, we want to encourage work. And so in the Medicaid reforms that we said if you're an able-bodied, work-capable adult without dependents, then get your health care through your work. Earn an income so that you can afford higher quality, better than Medicaid health insurance. In addition, I have worked routinely with the Kentucky Community Technical and College System. We need more trades. We need more electricians and plumbers. And we've worked with the home builders on encouraging more young people to go into these trades where they can become entrepreneurs. These are
And there you go. For those of you who couldn't see, he probably licked his lips like 10 times. A lot of ums, a lot of darting back and forth with his eyes. If you can tell, his tempo picked up. A lot more ums. He's speaking louder, too. I don't know if that came across to you guys, but he was speaking louder. And he was darting between the moderator and the camera. The camera was, like, in front of him and the moderator over here. And he's darting back and forth like, I don't know, a cracked-out weasel. It's just being honest, okay? I know that's not the nicest words. I don't know how else. It's like the drug addict who comes up to you at the gas station and is selling you a lie, asking for gas. And you never want that to be the way you think of a politician, like a drug addict at a gas station. Like, that obviously was a bad performance there. And it doesn't make sense. He seems like he should be more public because he's pitching himself as, I'm the experienced guy. I'm the super knowledgeable, experienced guy. And then he comes across that way. We're going to go now to the texts. If got a few more in here. If you have want to text in your opinions, 502-571-0970. Here's one text here. The issue isn't who is the Trumpiest, it's who is the less Mitchiest. I agree, and I think what you're hitting upon, this is a statement I made here recently that I'd love for politicians in both the 6th District congressional race and the Senate race to talk about. Trump is only going to be in office for 2 more years. This Senate term is 6 years. You're going to have this person 4 years after Trump's not president. Additionally, let's keep in mind that the way things are looking for the Republicans in the House isn't great, and the likelihood they lose the House is a little bit higher than them holding on to it. By a little bit, I mean a lot. And so they lose the House. Well, Trump's agenda isn't going to get through anyways. So honestly, it's not about how much you support Trump per se. It's about who's going to carry forward the America First agenda without a president there to direct their every move. When there's not a president who won the vote by 30 points here in Kentucky. How are you then going to behave? How are you going to vote then? And saying, I'm going to follow Trump's lead doesn't make me think you're going to be your own man and be able to handle that decision-making when Trump's not there to lead you. Just my opinion. You get in yours, 502-571-0970. Someone else said Trump should not endorse. I think, once again, as it gets closer, I think Trump may not endorse. It is getting closer. To your point, there's 3 people in this race that all have a chance to win. He's got allegiances to all of them. He's priorly endorsed Daniel Cameron. To not endorse him again kind of goes against the endorsement he made, back a year or so ago. And then you have Barr, who obviously has done a lot of work for him in Congress, and he's getting pushed forward by some of his allies to Trump. And then you have Nate Morris, who is good friends with J.D. Vance. Vivek has endorsed him. Trump Jr. has all but endorsed him. He announced he was running on Trump Jr.'s podcast. Elon Musk has endorsed him. These are all Trump's friends, Trump supporters, so it'd be hard for him to go against it. Another person said, Daniel 2026. Another one said McConnell machine should go back to China. I agree. Someone said Cameron will not criticize McConnell. It would make him look ungrateful for McConnell's previous support. I don't know, because where McConnell's not supporting him now, and has turned against him, he may be a lot more willing to criticize some of his recent decisions. And Cameron has a unique ability to kind of do those things in a respectful way. But if he doesn't, that could be a very good reason why. Well, continue to send in your text messages. We'll be going through these and also Nate Morris's goods and bads when we get back, and a little bit more about the debate as well. Go ahead, send in your text 502 502-571-0970. Once again, that's 502-571-0970. That's our Kentucky Voice text line. We'll see you when we get back here shortly, in a few short minutes.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you are back here on Kentucky's Voice. I'm your host for the day, Andrew Cooper. We're going through that Republican primary debate. We've talked about Cameron's goods and bads. We've talked about Barr's goods and bads. Now we're going to talk about Nate Morris' goods and bads. Send in from that debate, the goods and bads from that, specifically that debate. We'll also talk about the format. Send in your questions, 502-571-0970. Once again, 502-571-0970. I'll respond to them. I've got a few more I'll go through here. But first, I want to get through the goods and bads with Nate Morris. So, Nate Morris's performance. The good sides of things, and which is kind of weird because it's good and bad, I guess, would say. But, well, one, he was the king of the one-liners. At one point, he called out Andy Barr. This was Mitch McConnell back and forth. And he called out Andy Barr. He said, look, because he was asked, well, you interned for McConnell, so why don't you? And he's like, why don't you support McConnell now? They said that about Morris. And Morris said, look, I interned for him 20 years ago when I was 19 years old, or 30 years ago when I was not, I don't know how old he is now, but I interned for him decades ago when I was 19 years old. That's not like Andy Barr, who just last year said that Mitch McConnell was his mentor. And then he said, what kind of 50-year-old man has mentors? You should be mentoring others at that age. I thought that was a funny line. I mean, there's, you know, you can argue whether there's truth or good to it, but that was a pretty good one-liner. He had a few other good one-liners, and for it being his first big debate, he handled himself really well. He looked more polished and calm, and I'll give you an example of that, than Andy Barr did. But at the same time, I think, so he's running on the I'm not a career politician, but yet his behavior and his actions and the way he's talking is like that of a career. He comes across like a professional politician. And I think that's why he's somewhat struggling in the polls. Now, we do have a video. This is where I think this is what really hurt both Barr and Morris the most and put Cameron where if you're to pick a winner of the debate, I think you got to say it's not as much Cameron won, it's that the other two lost. Nobody had a breakout moment per se, but it's like these kinds of backs and forth. I want you to take a listen. This was a back and forth that happened between Barr and Morris. It does show, one, how Barr is not very polished. Morris is way more polished. But also it shows, just kind of gives you the tempo for the night, where them just going at each other's throats. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
You know, Andy Barr has a nickname in Washington. They call him Amnesty Andy for a reason. He's never met an illegal immigrant that he doesn't want to bring into our country and take the job for an American worker. This is a guy who voted to naturalize 2 million illegals into our country. Can you believe that? Absolutely crazy. This is a guy who's left the border wide open since the moment he got to Congress, and he's doing it because he's owned by the big banks. They want the cheap labor folks, and he's willing to give them as many illegals as they will take your jobs.
I think I'm entitled to a rebuttal on that. The bills that I have supported were supported by President Trump. They were the toughest border security bills in American history.
True.
Both of the bills.
We're not going to let you guys talk over each other. I'm going to give you 30 seconds and then you 30 seconds.
Both of the bills that Mr. Morris is talking about are bills that President Trump endorsed. And when those bills failed in the first Trump term, I was the leader in court. I led the fight in court to defend the president's legal authority to build the wall using defense appropriations. The only person who supports foreign workers replacing Americans is Mr. Morris, who hired them to replace American workers, foreign workers, and he embraced a UN proposal to open our borders to illegal immigrants.
That's not true.
That was his corporate position. And by the way, he put the mayor of Philadelphia on his board.
1 second, gentlemen. We're not going to speak over each other.
A sanctuary city, and he put a mayor of a sanctuary city on his board.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Morris, you have 30 seconds. A buzzer will go off at 30 seconds, and your mic will be cut off.
Folks, how do you know when a career politician is lying? They're moving their lips. This is a guy who lies with every breath that he takes. This is a guy that continues to let so many illegals into our country, millions and millions of illegals. Folks, he said that we owe Afghani nationals, we owe it to them, in allowing them to come to our country. And we all saw the tragedy over Thanksgiving. It was because of the Afghani immigrants that were unvetted that he led into our country that caused that tragedy over Thanksgiving. Andy, you got blood on your hands, and it's so sad to hear and listen to you lie about your record.
Thank you, gentlemen. You've gotten your time.
So that gives you a pretty good example of how it was all night between those two. It was a back and forth. Cameron just in the middle. I saw a comment online. Somebody said, I'll gladly pay for Cameron's dry cleaning after all that mudslinging he had to stand going on between the two of them. It was rough. I mean, I made a comment to somebody. I don't smoke, but I made a comment. I'm like, man, I need a cigarette after that. Like that got my nerves on edge, going them back and forth like that. And so, like I said, that back and forth really made Cameron look like the adult in the room. But also, even in that back and forth, Morris looks more polished than Barr, which is very surprising, considering one of them has ran for office before and has done so every 2 years for, over a decade. And the other one just hasn't. This is his first time running for office. But yet, you see you would think the other guy was the new guy. And I think that's, like I said, I think that's part of what hurts Morris, because when you look at Trump being the outsider, he came across as the outsider. He talked like an outsider. He behaved on debate stages like an outsider. He said what was on his mind. He clearly wasn't very polished, but that's what endeared him to many people. Nate Morris isn't coming across that way, so I feel like that does hurt at the whole I'm not a career politician thing. Now, going to your text messages, you can send them in 502-571-0970. That's a Kentucky Voice text line, 502-571-0970. Somebody's texted in, good morning, different topic, which is the SAVE Act. If you're already registered to vote, doesn't the first part not apply and you just need to have your driver's license? I don't hear anybody making this point. I'm not an expert on federal policies, but one question I've had on it is, real IDs require you to show your birth certificate as well. So I believe if you already have a real ID and you show that, you also don't need to do anything. But yeah, Kentucky, in a large part, already requires IDs to vote, already requires some of this. It's more about hitting states like California where they don't require anything other than like a signature on a piece of paper. And that's who they're more so targeting. Somebody else goes, detailed policy questions should be asked and questions should demand details of their possible. if they're possible, I think is what the person meant to say. So detailed policy questions should be asked and questions should be demanded details of their possibility. Yeah, this is, I think, a part of what's happened in our debates. Voters in general don't reward people talking about policy, because if you talk deeply about policy and you say the wrong thing, it can be used against you in ads and taken out of context and so on and so forth. So some people stay away from it. Like I said, there was some policy talk. There is a difference between Barr and Morris on immigration, at least. Cameron hit upon some certain policies he would push for, such as pushing to take federal funding away from sanctuary cities. So that did come in. But to your point, no, debates have largely just turned about, look, that guy's, all of us agree on the same thing, and we're all going to say the same thing, but I'm the truest of the three of saying that thing, so I'm going to attack the others. That's in large part what it's turned into. Another comment, Barr's main problem is he's a career politician. The fact that Mitch McConnell does not like Daniel Cameron anymore makes me like him. Yeah. So Daniel Cameron does not get that kind of McConnell money. It's so weird. They talk, and the reason why the other two ignore Cameron so much is because they say, well, he isn't, even though he's headed in the polls, well, he just doesn't have enough money. Cameron's nearly raised at this point $2 million. He'll probably raise close to $3 million through this entire campaign, and yet that's viewed as not a lot of money in the Senate race. $3 million, not a lot of money at all. Because Barr has sitting on millions. Morris can self-fund. He got $10 million in from Elon Musk to a super PAC as well. But Barr has been fundraising for years because you're able to transfer over the money you've raised in your congressional races over to this Senate race here. And so obviously that gives him that fundraising edge. Once again, you can get in your comments, 502-571-0970. Someone else said, news media people are the wrong choice for debates. Debates should be done by Republican politicians or conservative politician science professors. I think you're right. Take a look at this question here. I have this video. If we have time to play it, I think we do. Go ahead and play this video of a question that was asked to Morris that clearly was very confrontational. Take a listen.
It's running for the seat currently held by Senator Mitch McConnell.
Gentlemen, our next series of questions, we're going to ask you to respond to your harshest critics. And we pick back up with Mr. Morris. Mr. Morris, your critics call you a woke, fake conservative, trying to buy your way into the U.S. Senate. In 2019, your company, Rubicon, sent out a press release touting that you signed a pledge supporting DEI. Also, your super PAC received a $10 million donation from world's richest man, Elon Musk. Will big donors influence your decisions if you are elected to the Senate? And why has your public stance on DEI changed? You have 2 minutes.
Let me summarize that question for you. So you're a piece of trash. Everybody says you're a piece of trash. Why are you a piece of trash? That was like the essence of that question. It wasn't, hey, what's your response to those critics per se? It's that factually, you're a piece of trash. What's your response to people who call you that? That's how that question was asked. That's a very harsh question asked by a person who decided to ask a very harsh question. Okay, that'd be okay if the other two asked harsh questions. But instead, the questions they asked were only harsh if you're like a liberal or if you don't realize the harshest questions you can ask people. For an example, Barr was asked, his harsh question was, Al Cross says you're running the most racist campaign. How do you respond? That's an attack from the left. Not a single conservative thinks about Andy Barr's DEI ad saying it's not a sin to be white as like racist. That's not a Republican thought process. That's a Democrat thought process. You're giving him a gift by giving him the opportunity to talk bad about liberals during a Republican primary debate. So to your point, yes, it should be somebody else moderating these. We get back, we'll talk more about this debate, maybe about that Democrat debate real quick. Send in your thoughts, 502-571-0970. Once again, our Kentucky Voice text line, 502-571-0970. Responding more to your text, talking about the moderators, talking about the debate. Talking about the Democrat debate when we get back here on Kentucky's Voice. Stay with us. It'll be a short 2-minute break.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
And you're back on Kentucky's Voice, responding to your text. We've been discussing the Kentucky Republican Senate debate, responding to your texts as they've come in. You can send yours over, 502-571-0970. Once again, the Kentucky Voice text line, 502-571-0970. 0970. We've discussed a lot about the debate. Obviously, the setup was bad. The multiple moderators got an issue with. We've talked about that. The lighting issue with. The liberal moderators that don't know what questions to ask issue with. But going through your text here, somebody said Nate Morris's square jaw just looks wrong. Look, I'm not here to comment on people's appearances, and I'm not going to respond to that per se, outside of saying that I've always thought Andy Barr looks like Dick Dastardly from Wacky Races, but that's just my humble opinion on that. But anyways, here's another response. Barr and Morris had to tiptoe around criticizing Cameron. The word racist remains a weapon. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I've never seen Cameron use that word to his credit. I've never seen him, like, if somebody's criticizing him, calling him racist. Outside of, if you remember when he was running for governor, this racist BLM PAC ran ads against him saying skin folk ain't kinfolk. And basically, they're campaigning, BLM campaigning against a black politician in favor of the pastiest, whitest guy I've ever met in my life, Andy Bashir, and using racist epithets in that process. Nobody called them out for it. I think Barr did say, or not Barr, Cameron did say, that's a racist attack. But I don't think Cameron would call him racist. Maybe somebody else would. Obviously, liberals might. But, another comment, Republican Party of Kentucky still hasn't figured out one of the main tenets of Trump doctrine, excellent production value on TV. Yeah, like I said, somebody said it looked like a hostage video. The lighting was just awful. Somebody said in person it was much better, but you think they would kind of figure it out there. Someone said all three are doing Democrats' job. I don't know what you mean by that. So if that texter wants to explain that a little bit more, 502-571-0970. That's our text line. Feel free to send that clarification there. Also, send in your guys' thoughts, 502-571-0970. Which candidate will support a denaturalization policy? Well, I know for a fact Nate Morris would. He wants to stop all immigration completely, and I think he would support the denaturalization. He did call out Barr for allowing in the Afghan refugees, obviously one of which committed a attack here recently. So that's obviously there. Someone says, in Kentucky, my grandson just had to show his original birth certificate to get his initial driver's license. I used to work the polls in Kentucky. If you were on the register roll, you could just show a credit card with your name. Still room for some there. If someone wants to vote for someone else who is registered, if they have access to their credit card. Yeah, that was true. I believe that was changed like 2 years ago, where you do have to show an ID, not a credit card, to be able to vote. And I think they also, because I remember Adams had a big problem because they disallowed university IDs as well. You had to show an actual state issued ID, not a university ID. And Adams took issue with that for some reason, but he was ignoring the fact that they issue student IDs. They don't require the same documentation process, and they issue them to all students, including immigrant students. So that doesn't really count there, but that was dealt with. Once again, going through these text messages, go ahead, send yours in, 502-571-0970. They said, is it really fair to say that Daniel Cameron is a career politician? Early on I said this. I don't know if it is, only because he's held office for 4 years. Now, you could say, look, he's maybe only held office for 4 years, but he's worked in politics the entire time. So I guess he wasn't a lobbyist, but I guess the easiest explanation for this would be if a person's a lobbyist for 20 years and then runs for office, is he a career politician or not? That would be the question you have to answer within your own mind. But, I mean, if you're just looking at how long has he been in office, physically being paid by the taxpayer as an elected person, 4 years isn't a very long time. I mean, Nate Morris is promising 2 terms. He would only serve 2 terms. I believe Cameron is also promising he'd only serve 2 terms, 12 years in office. I mean, that's 3 times longer than Cameron's been in office. So would that make you 3 times over a career politician? I don't know, but that is a good point. And thanks for having the debate on your show. You're welcome. Someone said, companies were forced by the Biden administration to enforce DEI. Were Barr or Cameron running companies during Biden's term? Yeah, the attacks, what they're talking about is the attacks on Nate Morris over some of what his company did, issuing DEI statements or BLM type statements and holding Morris accountable for it. It is hard for me to say if that's an honest attack or not. I'm just being completely honest, my feelings here. I understand you're trying to build a business. I'm a business owner myself. You're trying to build a business. You're going to have to work with people you don't like. And especially like under the Biden administration or others, if you, or at one time too, the stock markets were requiring certain DEI remarks and you to take a liberal viewpoints and far left viewpoints to be adopted within your company policy in order to be listed on the stock market. And so if you're playing that game, and I think Nate Morris said this too during the debate, if you're playing that game, it is harder to be able to say, well, I'm super conservative while I'm trying to build a company, and it became worth, over $1 billion, I believe. I'm trying to build this company from nothing, and at the same time, there's this political game being played. And so it does lead to that question. I mean, Trump himself donated to Democrats when he needed to, especially in order to influence policy within the cities he was doing real estate development with. I mean, that's just kind of the facts of the matter. So I do understand that statement. Is it a fair attack, not a fair attack? Because you can also say, look, you should have stuck to your guns. If you're going to be a conservative fighter, how willing are you going to be to give up your principles once you're in Senate? I mean, those are reasonable questions to ask too. So I do think there is some back and forth here going through your text. Once again, 502-571-0970. That is the text line. Someone else said, Dims talked about having to change their birth certificate for voter registration. Bull, you don't change your birth certificate. You change your picture ID, driver's license. You don't need a passport to vote. Democrats lie. Well, they are lying. They make it sound like it's awful. They make it sound like they talk about married women. Well, married women won't be able to because their names have changed because they've gotten married, and then they have to show both their birth certificate and their marriage certificate and everything. This is something they have to do all the time to get IDs too, as well. I think it's not as strenuous as Democrats make it to be, and it leaves you to ask why. We know why they want illegals to vote. They want it to be as easy to vote as possible so other people can vote for you too. I mean, mail-in voting, they'd love for one person to be able to fill out 10 ballots and sign it without any verification, mail it in, because they're the ones who break those laws. Here you go. Someone else said, Cameron spoke to Kentuckians. Morris and Barr looked like they were fighting to speak to Trump. I think that in a nutshell sums up where each group is right now, to be quite honest. I mean, you can look at things like the fact that both Morris and Barr within 10 minutes of each other endorsed Ed Gowrine against Thomas Massie. Regardless of how you feel about that race, it doesn't matter. What matters is they were clearly told by the Trump administration, if you want an endorsement, you're going to have to endorse Ed Gowrine in that race. And so they both did so, hopped to it. Even after Nate Morris, to be honest, had told several people, including myself, he really liked Massie, and he wouldn't endorse in that race. I know Representative Roberts came out saying, hey, look, he said this to me as well. So not happy about that at all. That more so that he went back on his word and that it was done just surely for the Trump endorsement. But I also look at some of the ads. I mean, Nate Morris running tariff ads. Tariffs as a whole, as a political issue, people don't have that strong of feelings for. The people against have strong feelings. So as a political issue in and of itself, touting Trump's tariffs isn't particularly something that is worthwhile. I'm not saying the Trumps are bad, the tariffs are bad. I'm just saying that it as a political issue normally isn't worth spending money on, because the people who are for them are just for them. The people who are against them are super against him, but it's not a single issue. It's not like if somebody's like, if I don't hear he's for tariffs, I ain't voting for him. There's not a lot of people who feel that way. So it ain't worth spending the money on, but he does. And that is clearly aimed at talking to Trump, not to Kentuckians. And Barr, the same thing. I mean, his entire viewpoints have shifted just to fall in line with Trump. I mean, let's not forget, after January 6th, Barr sat there and said that he held Trump accountable for it and donated to people who voted to impeach Trump. So if he's that much of a Trump loyalist and he's not just pretending right now, then why do you do those things? That's what I mean by just you change your, and that's probably part of why Barr came across that way. He's not super comfortable with his viewpoints he's taken because they're just not his viewpoints. I'm not saying you can agree or disagree with his viewpoints, but I'm just saying that it's just coming across that way. Let's see, get tired of nobody responding correctly. I think they're talking about people responding to the questions. They don't deal with the questions themselves. And yeah, I mean, it's a politician two-step. We see that all the time. Somebody said, if only we can get Bashir government to stop selling driver's license to illegals. Yeah, I mean, where's like 2 people have been indicted, 3? Where's everybody else that was involved in the process? What did Bashir know when he knew it? Someone else said, I don't think Charlie would have endorsed Nate Morris if Nate really was what Barr was accusing him of. Yeah, I think so. I mean, to your point, I think Barr also, though, was friends with Nate up until this race. He took money from him. He was over at his house all the time. Nate Morris tells a funny story about how Barr would always come to his Christmas parties and eat him out of house and home and fill his cheeks like a squirrel. It's a joke he makes. I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying I know Nate has done it. And don't get me wrong, the spreads at his Christmas parties are nice and all. But Andy Barr, the image is there. And he did take money from Andy Barr. So to that point, yeah, they didn't used to have issues. They live in the same city. They knew each other very well. It wasn't until they started running against each other, and now they have issues with one another. One final text here. Nope. If only we can get driver's license. Already said that. So there you go. There is comments for today. Didn't have time to get to that Democrat debate. I'll have that on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. That'll be Sundays at 6. I'll talk about that, as well as some bills going on in the legislature. So make sure you're tuning in for that. But until next time, we'll be seeing you